So welcome everybody here. We're back with another Infinite Layers. Today it's a little different because typically we've been having a lot of AVS and roll-up teams that are building on EigenLayer. But today we have a teammate or an individual that's worked both at Eigen Foundation as well as Eigen Labs. So Ishaan, welcome to Infinite Layers. Today we're going to be talking about Intelligent DeFi. Intelligent DeFi is a blog post that Ishaan wrote that has really caught a lot of traction. I just went to Singapore to Token 2049, a lot of side events there, had quite a few people come up to me and just tell me that EigenLayer sparked their interest after reading this. So we thought it would be cool to have him on here and just to dive deeper into it. So Ishaan, do you want to give us a quick intro to yourself? Tell us about how you got not only into Web3, but how you got into working with Eigen Labs and then now Eigen Foundation.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nader, for having me. So I'm Ishaan, protocol researcher at Eigen Foundation. And you said how I got into Web3. So I started during COVID, like I think a lot of people. I used to only eat at local restaurants, and all of my favorite restaurants were dying. So a few friends and I created a startup to connect these small businesses with retail investors and crowdsource equity funding. So had a lot of fun building out a platform to connect these businesses. We were using stablecoin rails because credit cards were just too expensive. They can't bite those 3.5% fees. And I think that payments is still one of the most interesting use cases of crypto today. It unfortunately didn't work out due to some legal issues, but that's how I got in. And it was a lot of fun.
So where have you worked, I guess, before Eigen Labs, and how did you kind of get started with EigenLayer?
Absolutely. So when I was building that startup, Meldex, we needed to use low-cost blockchains because even back then, Ethereum mainnet was too expensive. So I got really close with the Ava Labs team, joined Avalanche way back in 2022. During that Avalanche Rush summer, ended up shifting to an investing role at Jump Crypto, focused on DeFi and infra. And yeah, now I'm here at EigenLayer, which is
nice. Yeah, I think we met first. The first week that you joined, we were all in New York for an offsite. That was back in April, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Great time.
Yeah, it feels like a long time has gone by since then, even though it's relatively kind of short. But cool. So let's dive into Intelligent DeFi. Can you kind of give us a quick overview? I've linked to the blog post, by the way, on the Twitter. So if you're kind of watching this on Twitter, you should see a link. If you're watching this on YouTube later, we'll also link to it.
Yeah, definitely. So Intelligent DeFi, how it started is that I love DeFi. I use it multiple times a week and pretty active on chain, and mostly use DeFi protocols, especially perpdexes. And I was seeing a bunch of different really cool protocols come out. One of my new favorites is called tomorrow.news. It allows you it's a prediction market where you type in what you think the headline for tomorrow's New York Times is going to be. And it uses an LLM to rate you, and then gives you it gives you stuff you put in money, and based off of how close you are to the actual project or to the actual headline, it gives you some funds accordingly. So you can win or lose based off of how close you are. And I see a bunch of these cool projects coming out. So effectively wanted to write a blog post that talks about the different projects that are coming out in DeFi, unlocked by new technologies out there, like ZK coprocessors, which are bringing off-chain compute trustlessly on-chain, or ZK-TLS, which is doing the same thing for off-chain data, and many more.
So before we dive into the specifics here, there's been a lot of, like, I would say, conversations about people that are trying to explain EigenLayer because some people still don't understand it. Some people think it's like really simple. And I think once you grok it, it is fairly easy to understand. But if someone was to ask you what your definition of EigenLayer is, what would that be? And I'm assuming it's like different than everyone else's. So I'm just kind of curious how you would explain that to the complete noob, like the newest person, without being overly technical.
Yeah, that's a good question. So how I think of it is you have cloud computing like AWS, and AWS effectively allows developers anywhere to just build software and deploy it. So they don't need to worry about the complexities of actually running their software on a machine. Now, EigenLayer, what it does is it's AWS, it abstracts these complexities for decentralized services. And so what this means is that it connects builders with machines to actually run their software. But rather than running the software itself, we use a decentralized network of operators, because if it was just Eigen Labs running the software, that wouldn't be very decentralized. Now, how do you know you can trust these operators? You need to give them rewards if they run correctly and punish them if they run maliciously. And so in order to do that, you need to have some capital at stake. That's the easiest way via proof of stake. And now we have three groups of people. One is the builders, second is the operators, and three is the people who are providing stake to these operators. At a high level, I think EigenLayer is this marketplace that connects these three. It decouples the actual talent that's building, the operators running and providing compute, and the stakers providing capital. And that way you can have a more cohesive environment of like new decentralized services out there being built.
Okay, so that's a good explanation, I think. So if someone was to ask me, I think I've been trying to get this down to just like one phrase, and this leaves out so much, though. It leaves out the staking, and it leaves out a lot of the, actual details that might be important for someone to truly understand how it works. But yeah, I mean, I think the analogy to cloud computing is apt, or essentially saying it's basically like a developer platform that just makes it a lot easier to build arbitrary services, decentralized or verifiable services. But anyway, that's for a separate discussion. I think the idea of having all of these verticals is kind of interesting, because it kind of really underscores the breadth of what can be done, because we're just talking about DeFi alone, and we're already kind of like uncovering maybe a few dozen use cases that you can kind of do here. And I think it's kind of interesting to kind of really realize what all can be done, because you have all these different verticals, and within each vertical, you have maybe dozens of things that can be kind of built. And I've been working in, infrastructure for about 8 years now, in a sense, from AWS days, now in Web3. And it's always cool to kind of like be working on something that unlocks the ability for developers to just build cool stuff. So I think it's really especially exciting to be working here. So Intelligent DeFi specifically, do you want to kind of start going over maybe some of these specific ideas that you've talked about, and maybe even calling out some of the teams that are maybe building in these specific areas?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I think it might be helpful to define intelligent DeFi just succinctly. And I think intelligent DeFi is on-chain finance that is unlocked by capabilities from trustless off-chain compute, trustless off-chain data, and other decentralized networks. From there, like those applications, while it sounds vague, can be used in a wide variety of different use cases on chain, whether it's exchanges, derivative platforms, lending platforms, or anything else. So one thing I'm super excited about is a project called Sorella Labs. And what they're doing is that they're trying to mitigate loss versus rebalancing in AMMs. And so what this means is that we know that AMMs or the LPs and AMMs are notoriously unprofitable. So how can we make it more profitable so that more people want to provide capital, and then more transactions are actually happening on chain? So right now there are three parties in any AMM transaction, just at a high level. you have the LPs, you have the traders, and then you have the people who are arbitraging the AMM. And the more money you can take away from the arbitrageurs and give it back to the LPs, the more efficient this ecosystem is going to be. So what Sorella does is that they just run an auction off chain they run an off-chain auction, and what this does is the proceeds of this auction can go back to LPs, and this gives the winner of the auction the right to arbitrage the pool. And so assuming you have a competitive auction, now the majority of those arbitrage proceeds are actually going back to LPs, and they're staying in that system rather than being extracted away.
Okay, so before this would have been implemented, when you say extracted away, like where would that additional capital be going, I guess?
Yeah, the capital would go from to these arbitrageurs. And so to think about it, you can think that there are two types of exchanges. One is off-chain exchanges, which are just running continuously. They have trades happening every second or every millisecond. And then you have on-chain exchanges like Uniswap on Ethereum mainnet that's happening every 12 seconds. What happens in between that time? Every second, like the price is changing, but the price on Uniswap is going to be staying the same. And so what you need to do when the price changes, the first person who transacts on that Uniswap pool, they're going to be able to, the first person who transacts on that Uniswap pool, they're going to be able to arbitrage between the on-chain and the off-chain exchange. And they're going to take that money and just run. We call this loss versus rebalancing. So if you run an off-chain auction, then you can say, I'm going to, I realize that this arbitrage is going to happen, but I want the majority of that value to not go to an arbitrageur or a searcher, but instead go back to the LPs. So you run an auction, and many arbitrageurs are competing in this auction, and you do maybe a second priced auction or sealed bid auction or whatever, and then send the winner of that auction, they're happy, they get to arbitrage, but they're also paying for the right to do so. And that right goes back to the LPs. Now, LPs, they lose less money. They're willing to put in more capital as a result and potentially give in tighter spreads to the in the AMM as a whole. So now traders are happy as well. You have more volume coming in, and it's just overall a more efficient closed loop cycle.
So that would be like the portion of the blog post we're looking at now. And Sorella, they're part of that Uniswap V4. I'm sorry, yeah, the Uniswap V4 hackathon. Is that right? You want to talk a little bit about that hackathon for anyone that might be interested in participating in this vertical and maybe getting their foot in the door?
Yeah, absolutely. So Sorella is interesting because they're not just an AMM. They're actually built on top of Uniswap. And I think we're seeing this modularization of DeFi where Uniswap isn't becoming an AMM. V4 is actually a platform of AMMs so that anyone can customize their own exchange via hooks. Now, Sorella built in this pre-trade hook that allows you to run auctions and like compete in this auction to bid if you want, which is awesome. And they're also going to get a lot more order flow from the Uniswap front end and other aggregators that use Uniswap. So now they don't need to fight for their own order flow, which is really cool. What EigenLayer and Uniswap have done together is we realize that this is like a lot of people are going to be building these hooks, what Uniswap calls their customized AMMs, as AVSs, because there's just so much you can do with off-chain compute and off-chain data. why wouldn't you combine these two technologies? So EigenLayer recently sponsored the Uniswap V4 hackathon, which is made by Atrium Academy. Happy to link below as for like how to register if you're interested. And what we saw is that actually two of the top two winners, so first and second place, from the most recent hackathon were actually both Uniswap V4 hooks and EigenLayer AVSs. And I think that's super exciting. So I wrote a separate article about just what is possible with V4 or like V4 hooks and EigenLayer AVSs. It's called Request for AVS Uniswap V4.
Oh yeah,
hooks.
that's a good one. We got a link to that one too. Is this the page that I'm looking at here for the Uniswap? Is that the same one or is this something different?
Yeah. This is the Uniswap hook incubator, and they have a hackathon at the end of the incubator. They're great at teaching like how Uniswap works and how to build on top of it.
Yeah, I was super impressed by this hackathon because not only the quality of builders that kind of came out of it, but the value of like some of the projects that came out of it were legitimate like companies. Like if someone built this thing and like built it out, it could literally be an actual company. So whenever you see those sorts of products where you say come out of these hackathons, you kind of know that, and they've done so now two times in a row. I've seen that happen. So consistently impressed by this event.
Yeah. I actually talked with one of the winners, and they're planning on raising. So I think
that's what's up.
connect them with VCs and hey, if you want to build on EigenLayer, we want you and we want to help you.
Amazing. What's another I guess vertical or use case that you want to kind of touch on, I guess?
Yeah. I think this one is less technical. I think number 4, it's the advanced margin system. And this is for all of the degens out there. Like if you like to trade perps, then sometimes you like to go really high on leverage. And I've been accused of doing this and losing money far too many times. But one thing I like to do is trade, let's say, I think that I don't know if Bitcoin is going to go up or ETH is up or down, or if ETH is going to go up or down. I don't have a good insight into the markets, but I think that ETH is going to do better than Bitcoin in the next week. Not financial advice, I'm just making stuff up. But over the next week, I think ETH is going to do better than Bitcoin. So I want to trade ETH BTC or cross. But now how perp dexes work is that they calculate your margin by saying, they calculate your margin by taking how much deposit you have and then how much open positions you have. So if you have a 10K deposit and 100K long on Bitcoin, that's 10x leverage. If you have a 10K deposit and 50K short Bitcoin and 50K long ETH, that's also 10x leverage. But those are very different positions. And I think that you should be able to trade a lot more on ETH BTC than 5x ETH BTC than 10x Bitcoin, because ETH BTC or cross is just a very it's not very volatile as an asset compared to Bitcoin as a whole. So maybe you should be able to trade like much more, maybe 40x or 50x. But now, how do you calculate this margin system, right? Now you need a more complex system. Maybe you're running risk profile or like simulations, or you're taking into account off-chain liquidity and on-chain liquidity to see like how much until someone can be liquidated. And in order to do this, you can't just rely on the on-chain compute, because there's not that much gas in order to do this simulation analysis like you see in this diagram.
Right, it's just too much compute it's just too much work to be done directly on chain. Is that correct? Is that like a general way to say that.
Exactly. Too much work for on-chain. And so if you can use off-chain compute, potentially via ZK coprocessor or anything else, then what you can do is you can actually you can do this more advanced margin system and only liquidate people as needed. So now I have access to 50x cross leverage. And I think that's like super exciting for someone like me who doesn't know which way the market will go, but does know which way, or like does have an idea that ETH will do better than Bitcoin or vice versa. So I found this, I would find this super useful and use a perp dex that allows me to trade more leverage this way.
So are there any actual, like, have you seen companies and teams already building a solution for this, or is this more like a theoretical thing?
So not yet. What we have seen is people are using off-chain compute, but they're doing so in a centralized way. And so if you look at some perp dexes, I don't want to name names, but they're a bit more centralized. And what they do is they effectively run this compute and then bring it back on chain, and it gives you the nice user experience. Which is nice. But then if they want to, they could just change their formulas like this, and then you're auto liquidated. And that's not much better than FTX or like other centralized exchanges, which are centralized exchanges are at least bound by laws, right? In the wild west of DeFi, if you don't have laws to protect you and it's centralized, now you just have the worst of both worlds. So instead, if you use a decentralized zero knowledge coprocessor, then you can run these computes verifiably off chain, bring those the results of that compute on chain with a ZK proof saying that yes, this is the exact formula I use to compute your leverage and margin factor, and I did use your specific data. Then that's great. That solves our problem. And what we're seeing is that with ZK proofs, the cost of those decreasing, we're seeing more and more of this being possible. So would love to see an advanced margin system that's actually decentralized.
Amazing. So this is alpha. Like, if you're watching this and you want to build something that has value that no one's done yet, here you go. I know that there was this like blog post that was written a long time ago before I joined, called the next like 15 unicorns to build on EigenLayer.
Yeah.
And now there are like multiple like $100 million companies that came out of those ideas. So I kind of look at this as like the DeFi version of that. So if you want to like build the next valuable company and you have the skills to do so, here's some ideas. Yeah. And we want to work with you. So reach out to us. So do you want to touch on anything else? I guess there's only two areas in derivatives. Do you want to talk about, pricing and options AMM, or is this more just like a side use case as opposed to like maybe an actual product?
Yeah. I think that one's interesting, but it might be cooler to touch on something else. Maybe number 8, compliant privacy mixers.
Compliant privacy mixers, okay.
Yeah. So this is another one that's more interesting, and it's more. I think it's more ideological to start with. It's saying, do people want privacy? And I think, despite how much transactions are happening on chain now, I think the answer is yes. There's a reason that I earn my salary in a USD bank account right now, even though I would love to earn it on chain in crypto. Part of that is regulation, but another big part of that is I don't want everyone to know how much I make. And I think you do need these like more private blockchains. I think it is important. Now we had a very cool privacy application on Ethereum called Tornado Cash, but there was a lot of people used it for malicious reasons, and the SEC ended, or sorry, like OFAC ended up shutting it down. They said not shutting it down, but they sanctioned all people who were using it as well as the addresses itself. And they're saying, okay, this is facilitating money laundering. We do not condone this. If you're using Tornado Cash, we're gonna come after you. And understandably, a lot of people wanted to stay away from this, including builders. And so now it's hard to actually get in a transaction in Tornado Cash, which is really unfortunate. So what if we could build a regulatory compliant version of Tornado Cash, a compliant privacy mixer that doesn't enable money laundering? Now, this seems really hard. You're trying to bring in privacy, but also identify if a person is potentially laundering money and remove them. So how can you do this? And what we're seeing is that what if within the smart contracts of this privacy mixer, you could check against the database to see, is this address OFAC sanctioned, or are they part of the hack? You can do that for every depositor and every withdrawer, and that would be that'd be pretty powerful. It could solve our problems. But now, how does a privacy mixer get access to this data? And so we can actually run another decentralized network off-chain that effectively tracks all OFAC sanctioned addresses, all addresses that have interacted with those addresses, and actually go a second level via a flow of funds graph that says what addresses have interacted with addresses that have interacted with those OFAC sanctioned addresses. And if you remove those, exclude those, and let everyone else deposit and withdraw, now you have a safe privacy mixer. And we saw a project called Ethos, they rebranding, a project called Predicate that does exactly this. And I'm really excited about Predicate's flow funds graphs. They're at a more general level, they're a real-time policy engine that smart contracts can plug and play into. But for this use case specifically, I think that's really exciting and definitely a use case of intelligent DeFi.
So in terms of, and I probably missed this, but so how can a mixer be also compliant? Because the whole point of like a mixer is to wash funds essentially, right? Mm-hmm. Or is there something like else that that I'm missing here?
Yeah. I think the point of a mixer is to wash funds, but as long as all of those funds are coming from legal, legitimate sources, then it's okay.
Oh, okay, got it. So that's kind of where it comes in. If the tracking receives, if there's something that gets flagged as illegitimate or whatever, then does it prevent the transfer from happening in the first place, or does it just depend on the implementation?
Yeah, so it definitely depends on implementation, but what Predicate does is that you can make a call out to their Predicate network, and if Predicate network will respond back with a yes, this person is an OFAC sanctioned address, and that goes against the predefined policies that you set, so you should reject this transaction. And then your smart contract, or the privacy mixer smart contract, can simply deny the transaction from actually going through.
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah, there seems to be a lot of value in that. So is that something that someone that you said is basically possible using something like Athos to enable that, or is that something that already is being built?
Yeah. This is something that again isn't being built just yet. I would
Got
love
it.
to see it.
This is
And
alpha right here. I mean, look how much usage Tornado Cash has. It's
yeah,
insane.
yeah.
This is really cool. I like this a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, it's truly the stuff of legends. So
Hell yeah. And
so
this is kind of like a nice little diagram that kind
yeah,
of
this
shows the
goes.
architecture a little bit.
hmm the team there is super smart. So happy to talk more and connect with the team if you want to build something like this.
Yeah, if someone wants to build this, reach out to us again. Okay, amazing. Is there any other areas that you want to touch on next?
I think yeah, happy to talk about hyper targeted incentives. So number 10, or just
Yeah.
dive into anything else from there.
Okay, let's take a look at this. Yeah, you want to give us a TLDR?
Sure. So TLDR is every crypto app uses incentives either via like points or via either via points or via like token streaming to give incentives to their users to get them to use it. But what if you could do more targeted incentives? Let's say you want you're building compound and or a lending protocol, and you wanted to give more targeted incentives to stimulate actual activity you want. So you don't want to incentivize loopers, but you do want to incentivize people who are depositing one asset and withdrawing or borrowing another, and then maybe they're trading that somewhere else on Uniswap, and then trading that somewhere else on Uniswap and putting this like depositing their interest-bearing token for collateral in a staking platform like EigenLayer. And now you can have more targeted incentives that are as arbitrarily complex as you want. And what this allows is that you can predefine what are the most valuable actions that users can potentially take on my application, or make it dynamic. And you can give incentives targeted directly towards those. And you can use this you can do this in-house via something like a ZK processor, which Gearbox is doing already. Or you can use, I wish I knew about this earlier, but I recently learned about Royco, which is this incentivized like market creator. And what they're doing is they're trying to productionize this for anyone to use. And I think that's super cool. So with their V2.
Very cool. Okay, so this is probably a stupid question, but for someone that doesn't know, what is a looper?
Sorry, I use too much on-chain, like too much DeFi terminology. But let's say you're depositing ETH in Aave, you can borrow up to 66% of your value of ETH, and then you can borrow ETH against your ETH. And that's not super valuable to Aave as a system, even though it is allowed. And now you can redeposit that ETH and then reborrow more ETH against it. And so if you do like this geometric sum formula, you can find out that with one ETH, you can borrow up to like twice as much ETH as that. So you have 3 times the overall amount of ETH, and you're just looping to earn rewards. And this is bad for incentives because they're just stealing incentives without actually providing.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So it seems that so it seems like the idea here with a lot of these ideas is that new infrastructure is enabling like new use cases. Like some of these use cases alone wouldn't be possible, but because of these ZK coprocessors and other protocols and services, you can kind of utilize those to combine them to build out even more stuff. So this kind of reminds me a lot of when you kind of hear Sriram talk about the vision of EigenLayer, he often talks about this verifiable SaaS or AWS. And working at AWS was interesting because developers could come in and like grab all these different pieces and like build out these ideas. But if those pieces didn't exist, they couldn't do that, right? Or they would have to build them themselves from scratch, which was, often not possible just because it was outside of their expertise. So it kind of like seeing a lot of analogies here where you have all these new primitives available, and then you can kind of now easily or more easily build out these solutions because you have these primitives, which
absolutely
is cool.
Yeah. I think that's the beauty of infra, right? Is that it enables new possibilities that you didn't think were possible beforehand. And I think private Tornado Cache or an AMM that mitigates loss versus rebalancing are examples of this.
Yeah, and I think like when we hear people talk about the app layer or infrastructure layer, there's a little more nuance than that in reality, because like a lot of the applications are specific to the underlying infrastructure. Like in the case of maybe a poly market, for example, one couldn't have come without the other. They both had to have come at the same time in their case, right? Like you couldn't say, oh, someone should just build poly market, but in reality, they also had to have the back-end infrastructure for that app to exist. And I think that's the case with a lot of these. Like these are infrastructure pieces that will enable new use cases on the client. So that's just something I want to call out, that I think it's kind of more nuanced than the discussions that you often hear online, where people are like, we need less infrastructure, we need more apps. Well, sometimes these apps are reliant on this new infrastructure, and they kind of go a little closer together than we'd like to admit.
Yeah, fully agree. You can't have Polymarket without Uma's optimistic Oracle or a way to maintain so many orders on the back end, like so many limit orders.
Cool. So we've gone over some of the more interesting like ideas. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover before we start wrapping it up?
I think those are the main things. I just want to say that based off of these things, there's a lot of real applications also being built. I talked about tomorrow.news, which is using AI, injecting AI on chain, which is something I talked about more in the article. Sorella, of course, is both like they build out their own AVS infra, as well as the actual like DEX application. Then there are also other applications like Renegade, which is doing more private trading via dark orders. I think that what's happening in DeFi, there's actually a lot happening in DeFi now, and it's one of the most bullish periods. Bullish periods, and I think the next 12 months will continue to be very like innovative in terms of actual new product developments, just because of this new era of intelligent DeFi.
Super bullish. This is kind of one of the more interesting categories that's really popped up on my radar after seeing this blog post and diving into it. So if you are watching this, I guess a couple of things we want to kind of leave you with are, number one, these are just some ideas. There are a lot more ideas. So if you have any questions or you want to brainstorm with us, you can reach out to us. You can go to Build on Eigen on X. You can go to the link in our profile, and there's a lot of ways to get in contact with us. So we will happy to jump on a call with you. We're happy to jump into Telegram with you, whatever you'd like, and we can help you out. And we at Eigen Labs and Eigen Foundation, we work together to do a lot with our teams. So we provide as much support as we can on the engineering side in terms of like answering questions for you. But we also have a developer relations team. We even have a team that can help you with investment and all sorts of things. So if you're looking to kind of build something with us, reach out. We're looking to connect with you. So yeah, Ishaan, is there anything you want to kind of wrap up with on your end?
No, I think you got it. I'm excited about these new projects. So come chat. DM Nader on Twitter, DM me on Twitter. We'd love to talk with you guys.
Awesome. This was great. Thanks, Ishaan, for your time, and thank everyone for stopping by. And we'll have another Infinite Layers next week.
Perfect. See you guys.